I'm going to use a post-colonial term, and I will tell you then why, for opening this interplanetary space. So in this interplanetary space, we feel at home, and you have been just welcoming us and created this network of different homes, building up one. So I want to thank both of you. I also want to thank Marcus for taking us all here and making things easy. I want to also thank the former project, host film, and I want to thank the director, the main researcher of that project, Ana Manzanas, who something like 8 years ago talked to me and then invited me to that host film project. And I want to thank that project because it opened new ways to look at things, to think about things, and interact with people, and think about places and cultural representations as interplanetary things. There is not a movie outside there, there is not a country outside there, there is not a human being there, but something interconnected together. And I think that is what I learned in this project. I also want to talk about how this is my first appearance or participation in something after the COVID outbreak with the former project. So we ended up, Dr. Ana Manzanas and myself ended up in Maynooth, Dublin, the week before the lockdown started, in a seminar that Barry Cannon organized. And I have been talking to you like for 2 years, lockdown included, and I had never seen you again. So this is something that I want to remember today. No, we have re-membered through this project. I believe that this is also important. That is the first year I want to call to attention, 2020 or 2021, when the former project ended. I made it to that project after presenting my PhD on September the 9th, you never forget those dates, of the year 2015. That was 1 week after Alan Kurdi's photograph was released. So I remember going to my PhD defense, thinking about that photograph, remembering that that PhD tried to answer to that situation also, because I had a struggle with a PhD for 8 years, 4 years working in India on an NGO, and then back to university. And all those things together made sense. And I thought that I was moved both by the academic work and the human rights real work. So all those years should be calling to attention today. And I want to call those years into attention because I want to start with something that both Silvia and Cristina have shared in their presentations, which is the necessity of being moved. Today, I want to recall and highlight the importance of being affected, of showing responsibility and also practicing as a verb, as an action, response-ability. And I think that this is what this project wants to do. There is an impact that we want to create. There is an impact that we should be responsible of. And then there is an impact that we should also call into action. And this is what Viola was talking about. And this is what I want to start talking today in relation to aquatic cartographies. We've been talking about inland, or we have been looking to the sea from the inland, as Cristina was pointing. And I want to bring another theoretical perspective, which is the perspective of looking at things from an aquatic perspective. So this is a theoretical perspective that I'm exploring now, and that I think can be shared with the project because I found answers to some of the questions that have been formulated today. So for instance, Ana this morning, Ana Manzanas, threw this question: who is qualified to speak? And then when Eva was talking about this artist, she was questioned, where are the migrants? Are they speaking their own story? Who is speaking? Then Ana again answered about the importance of the commonality. And then Silvia and Cristina were talking about ontology. So what today I want to share with you is a plural epistemology that looks at the liquid surfaces something that offers new knowledge or knowledge that should be incorporated to our perspectives and our assessing evaluation of the impact that cultural representations do. Then, and I will start with the presentation now. This presentation was thought beforehand, taking into account the film Mediterranean that Christina talked about. So I wanted to present actually the BBC Two series Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, as the counter discourse to Mediterranean. So I want to call your attention onto that. This was created and researched to offer a different representation of migrants as compared to Mediterranean. And there were some questions. I don't know if this is working or not. Yes. Okay. There were some questions that I wanted to pose, and that's it, right? That I wanted to pose while I was starting to think about this presentation. So the first thing was, how would you define the Mediterranean Sea? Is that something singular? And then who tells the Mediterranean seas, if that is a plural surface, a plural field of study, or as we now say, if that is an interdisciplinary study, then who defines and who tells the Mediterranean seas as a plural thing? I don't know if this is working. It's very slow, right? Okay. So then the questions were, why are representations so important? Who represents and which body is represented? And then there was a question which is identity measurable? Who measures? Can we measure? How is it measured? And so on. So I was thinking, it's a pity the presentation doesn't work because there were some effects. Who tells? I started, when I was thinking about Mediterranean and this BBC series that I would be analyzing, I wanted to make a comparison about who tells. So for instance, when we look, or when people my generation look at the Middle East, there is this citizen called Leticia Ortiz. Maybe you know the name, Leticia Ortiz. Now, apart from being a citizen, she has become a member of the monarchy, and she was the journalist who covered and broadcast the conflict in the Middle East 20 years ago. So then the Middle East was seen through her eyes, and now 20 years later, the Middle East conflicts have been represented and retold using those testimonies. So that is something that we should take into account. Then, let's forget about the effects, I'm sorry. Then there is a discourse that movies such as Mamma Mia show. So Greece is great, go to a Greek island and have fun, and so on. Then there is the movie Mediterranean, with all the problematic approaches that Christina has shown. Then there are movies such as Cafarnaum, clearly describing how migration takes place. Then there are illustrations or descriptions about aquatic surfaces, such as the one offered by Titanic. Everything is fake, and then everything is altered, so then there is not a real setting. And then there are other series, such as, for instance, Years and Years, which focus on migration and offer alternative representations on migration and border crossings, which are a little bit different, but that miss a common point. And that common point, and that I'm going to go ahead without using the screen presentation, if that's okay. I'm sorry, I'm ruining the whole thing, but at least we can follow. So then, apart from all those representations and using this question, who tells, today I want to study the case of the BBC Two series and Open University series, so both of them produce it, Exodus, Our Journey to Europe. Exodus, Our Journey to Europe is a mini-series composed of 3 episodes of 50 minutes. The thing about this TV series is that during the crisis, the migrant crisis in August 2015 or 2015, the Open University got to distribute some mobile phones in Syria so that those thinking about crossing could broadcast and film first person their experiences of migration. So then, out of all that material, the TV series was produced and was a success. So then this was used as a TV series to talk about migrant identities using a testimony first person from migrants crossing. The theoretical point, which might be problematic, was that migrants were sent to migrate with a mobile, which was not the case at that point, and they were to show their first person experiences. The desire was to cause some impact in the people or in the audience watching the TV series. So today I want to use two theoretical approaches to present the good or the wrong sides of this TV series as opposite Mediterranean. So in Mediterranean, we've got a great production system trying to offer this hagiography of Marcel Camps as the savior, and Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, try to do the different thing. The migrants themselves are going to tell their own story, and we are going to offer a mini series about that. I believe that behind this proposal, there were two theoretical trends that we could use. The first one is to talk about invulnerable and invertebrate identities when we analyze the Mediterranean Sea. And the second one was the possibilities opened by talking about aquatic cartographies of cultural representation. I believe that these two theoretical trends can offer some light not only to this TV series, but to all the discussions that we are talking about. I believe, though, that Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, was a practice of dissent. So at least the TV series or the producing of the TV series wanted to say no to something and try to avoid and go beyond the marketing and the media paraphernalia of the migration, of the representation, of the migration, or the migration on TV. So there was this attempt to offer something different to how migration and the crisis in the 2015 was represented. The identities in Exodus are multiple. There are 7 people trying to cross from Syria, from Nigeria, and they travel around 26 states. We will see them after. And then after the success of this experience, there is a second season of this TV series called Our Journey Continues, in which a family which had made it to the UK is interviewed to assess how that migration has evolved. Spoiler alert, their situation is even worse than in their original state. So then, why talking about this TV series is important, and what can it add in terms of analytical vocab and sources to question? Well, the Mediterranean and the European Union policies are together, and they are blamed by extreme right groups or new political groups, and they are linked together. No, and then the Mediterranean Sea is seen as this space which is dangerous and which is criminalized. Then there are other representations about the Mediterranean Sea, you know, this kind of relaxing place where everything is great. And then there are laws being passed just 2 weeks ago, such as the one by Rishi Sunak, in which deportation takes place through the aquatic surfaces. So we are going to put all the migrants on a boat, and we are going to sail the boat back. So then that narrative of setting a boat to move with people, and that goes back to what Anna was talking before. This is important, and this is why I believe that the theory of invertebrate and invulnerable Mediterranean seas is important, because nowadays there is a necessity of Mediterranean heterotopias. The Mediterranean Sea is not something singular. There are different multiplicities in the Mediterranean, different representations, different realities, many silences, or many over-representations. As heterotopias are not there, we have a lot of homotopias. Homotopias can be defined as those places which are unified in terms of descriptions. So there is one single thing, there is one single problem, there is one single reality. Homotopias, states Lola López Mondejar, favor the possibility to mutate and enable anthropological mutations. And I clarify this. If places are represented as homotopias, as unified, if there is only one Mediterranean Sea, we are going, or we can go through an anthropological mutation. What is this anthropological mutation that Lola López Mondejar stated? It says, when you become unaffected, when you are not impacted by specific representations, you become invertebrate and invulnerable. Why? Sorry, I'm not moving. I explain this. Empathy diminishes, and then abstract thought and emotional intelligence are reduced and digitalized. So if there is only one description about the Mediterranean Sea, it is very easy to manipulate us. Because Lola López Mondejar states, we cannot cope as human beings with the amount of images that show the terrible aspects of the Mediterranean Sea. So then, as we, as human beings, cannot take that much suffering, look at our reaction after Cristina showed the picture. So our human mind cannot take all that. Our mind goes through anthropological mutation in which, or through which, we stop feeling. We stop being affected. And hence, we become invertebrate, we don't move, we are fixed, and we become invulnerable. We cannot be affected. So then, if there is only a homotopia in terms of the Mediterranean Sea, if other Mediterranean seas are not represented, then we become invertebrate and invulnerable. Great. Then the human being, Lola López Mondejar states, the human being becomes hyper-adapted to the sufferings by being invulnerable and invertebrate. This theory got some answer. In 2017, there was a survey done in Greece to see how the migrant crisis in the 2015 had affected tourism. And actually, it had tourism reduced by 70%. Why? Because people stopped coming to Greece because they didn't want to see these stories. They didn't want to become affected by that. So then we see how becoming invertebrate and invulnerable, or creating the Mediterranean, or representing the Mediterranean Sea and something invulnerable and invertebrate, got this reaction. This is important because, This is important because the Mediterranean Sea has been defined, or is defined, through the verb to mediterraneate, mediterranear, according to Lola López Mondejar. This means that there is a neologism which is pleasant and fosters the pleasures of proximity and the good aspects of safe spaces in terms of the Mediterranean Sea and its source. In other words, if I go to a place in Greece, Italy, Spain, Morocco, I'm going to have the best time of my life because I can have a resort, I can enjoy my wine, there is good food, and so on. So then there is this action of experiencing the Mediterranean Sea in a one-side way. The Mediterranean Sea in these terms becomes a tool for capitalism to cater choices of consumption, as Bauman states. So then the Mediterranean Sea, presented as that, is a place that can be consumed by some. We are always forgetting who makes the Mediterranean Sea able to be consumed. So that is part, or that is included in the word mediterranear, to mediterraneate. Everything becomes invertebrate in this space and can be modeled, adapted without limits. You go to Greece, you go to Spain, you go to Italy, you go to Morocco, and then on all these places we are going to have the same type of holiday. And that is the same Mediterranean Sea, because we are only presented through one kind of image and discourse. There is one single Mediterranean Sea. If I ask, what is the Mediterranean Sea for you? Some of you would say holidays, some of you would say great food, sun. We would say humanitarian crisis, the children, blah, 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 blah. Not everybody has been consuming that sort of speech. So then the Mediterranean Sea is used to represent the fantasy of invulnerability and becomes an invulnerable and invertebrated space. If we can only see that way of the Mediterranean Sea, then the homotopia is there and we consume it. However, this homotopia can be challenged, and this is something that Exodus, our journey to Europe, wants to represent. The TV series starts with the episode 1 showing how the Mediterranean Sea can only be understood through the many journeys going around. There is not one single Mediterranean Sea, but a connection among all of them. When they start showing the experience of migration and the experience in the Mediterranean Sea on the chapter 1 of the TV series, we see that there is a first person narrating his experience on a dinghy, trying to relate to the experiences of other migrants in different dinghies. So then we listen to Hassan, can you see the other dinghies? Can you recognize other experiences of migration? Then I believe that using the term aquatic cartographies or the theoretical approach of the aquatic cartographies is important to understand this TV series and might contribute from the field of postcolonial studies to how we look at the Mediterranean Sea. So using the term aquatic cartographies, we are using the thalacentric aesthetics. This is a methodological approach to place aquatic imaginaries at the core of transnational experiences. This means let's stop narrating events using inland vocab. Let's try to add different things. We need to destabilize, to break Eurocentric views and include transnational epistemologies. The main problem of Mediterranean is that it is extremely Eurocentric and it does not include transnational epistemologies. It only has got two epistemologies, the Spanish savor and Europe is a safe place. Then, if we incorporate this oceanic turn, we are going to mirror the experience of the migrants to the movement of water. So then the movement of water never stops. It's very difficult to have the movement of people stopped. So then we need to think about migrants and migration as something flux, vulnerable and vertebrate. Hence, homotopias about migration are not possible. I believe that Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, moves beyond the limitations of land-based interpretations, and it adds something which can delineate, can create oceanic routes and new perspectives that deconstruct the Atlantic centricism of representation. Because, for instance, Mediterranean, I'm going back to the film Christina was talking about, presents the whole story as an Atlantic discovery. They are going to find something, explore it, and resolve it. No, that's it. So then using the term aquatic cartography and using this perspective to analyze Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, might help us destabilize, create new epistemologies. If we use aquatic cartographies, normally we are looking at activist representations. So if we look at aquatic cartographies, we are going to look at artists who can be and are activists who dissent. If we decide to look at the ocean and look at those who speak from the ocean, then we are going to see people who try to add different things and we are going to become affected. Then we are going to represent and we are going to be affected by vertebrate and vulnerable human beings. And we are going to be able to articulate new resistances, which is a neologism that I have come across to see. If you resist, then there is a new existence which is going to be proposed. And there is a new hope, which is not neoliberal. Oh, you know, the migrant discourse, they are going to find a new place and they are going to be better. No. There are a lot of things. They have to resist that discourse to start with. They have to resist the original situation that they had. And they need to find some existence which is not dreamy whatsoever. So then there are some representations which are focused on the aquatic experience, which try to resist and offer new ways of existence. In this case, for instance, in Spain, we've got La Ley del Mar, the law of the sea, and we've got Exodus, the TV series that I'm about to talk about today, and Mediterranean, the film that Christina was talking about. These three features talk about migrants during their experience in water. So then the whole feature of these three cultural representations is based on water. In La Ley del Mar, this is a TV series which is available on Netflix. The whole season displays how the migrants make it on a boat. and we can only see the boat, and we see how their existence on the boat is defined and ruled by those who are in land. Okay? Then we have Mediterranean, that Cristina was talking about, and then we have Exodus, which allows us to see how first-person migrants will tell their experience. So then I'm going to try to offer you some instances about how Exodus, this TV series, portrays vertebrate and vulnerable identities, how looking at this TV series from an aquatic cartographic perspective is important, and why the TV series can be taken as an activist cultural production. So let's start. Exodus, Our Journey to Europe, displays the migrant crisis of 2015 in Greece and shows the story of 7 people and their journeys from Syria and from Nigeria through more than 26 states. If we look at cultural products from an aquatic cartography, we need to be considering wherever surface is crossed. So then, a migrant from Syria, in this case Hassan Akkad, crosses the river, makes it to Izmir in Turkey, then crosses a sea, and then crosses different rivers. So then the whole experience of crossing is made through water. And then in this series, we see the first-person testimony of Hassan Akkad, who is monitoring and recording the crossing of the Mediterranean Sea, the many crossings, actually, because we end up seeing that that crossing fails twice in the first-person narration through a mobile phone. Okay? So then, I believe that using the first-person narration allows vulnerable and vertebrate reactions. There are many crossings, and then this representation is going to be an exercise of activism. Why? Because the series won a BAFTA, and then Hassan Akram was included in the second season of the TV series as a cameraman. So then he became a part of that. Let me clarify this. Let's start talking about the first-person narration that Hassan Akkad does in the TV series. First-person narration that he starts recording. This is the story of the migrant crisis told by those who risk everything for the better life. He keeps on saying, I risked everything for a stupid idea called the UK. So then he is appealing to us. This was a bad idea. This was stupid. Hence, we know that the whole TV series is going to document how he made it from Syria to the UK. Okay? There are different images that he uses. So he makes it to Izmir, and then he goes on a tourist tour and documents how Izmir looks. It might be great, but we know that he is going to be in Izmir only some days until his dinghy leaves. Then they are put into a flat, and the whole life in this flat in Izmir is documented. Waiting for the dinghy to depart is not a pleasant experience. And this experience is extremely connected to an aquatic cartography of migration. Why? Because the moment he makes it to Izmir from Damascus, the first thing that he documents with his mobile phone is a life vest. And he says, fake life jackets, which make you sink instead of floating, were the first thing we saw. So from Damascus to Izmir, the first thing that he documents is that. Then, second scene, he cannot make it. The first time he tries to cross the Mediterranean Sea, and then they have to wait. They have been approached, do you want to go in Greece, and so on. And then we see how the waiting until the second dinghy leaves is documented. Everyone is scared, he states, and we see how everybody is waiting with a limited amount of water and food. And they've got a swimming pool in this flat, and they start rehearsing how the crossing of the Mediterranean Sea is going to take place. So then they go downstairs, they buy life jackets, and they realize that they are fake, and they use a swimming pool there to see what they will do with that. So then there is an aquatic cartography being represented there, which is the opposition of that swimming pool and the real experience of migration. The next scene, shows Hassan on the dinghy documenting the whole experience. I was helpless. You don't think your boat is going to go down, he states. They choose one and told him, we will teach you to operate the engine. And we see how he's experiencing the first crossing in first hand. We are actually affected, and we see that the migrant experience is vulnerable and vertebrate. And it changes because the 40 people on the dinghy experience different things, go through different things. The situation goes on, and he documents first person the whole experience, the whole crossing. This is problematic because obviously the mobile phone is there and you see how people are about to drown, and he keeps recording. But we get the first person narration saying, watch out, this is happening. It's not Marcel Camp saving them, but them trying to be surviving in that thing. So that representation adds something, which is their own experience. Then he makes it to Greece, and he's asked, how do you feel now that we are in Greece? Another migrant asks him, and he says, I feel the same. I don't know what to do. I still have to cross many waters to see what is going to happen. Finally, they make it, and they reach the jungle which is represented and which is called, that Calais is called. He still thinks about how do I make it to England, how do I cross, and how do I apply to asylum there. And then he needs to save his beer, he needs to try faking his ID constantly, and he documents how he has to cross different surfaces of water and how his whole experience changes. We get to know about his experience because the TV series wins a BAFTA, and the whole TV series becomes important. And there is a sort of important action here when the director of the TV series asks Hassan to thank first person why this TV series is important and why the TV series should be at least taken into account. It should be taken into account because it shows vulnerable and vertebrate Mediterranean seas. There is a counter discourse to invertebrate and invulnerable descriptions. It appeals to audience with first-person testimonies, which are different to those in Mediterranean. Anthropological mutations are stopped. Then it proposes aquatic cartographies of migration. There are many migrations taking place at the same time. It portrays identities in flux, and it calls to response abilities. And then this cultural representation of this cultural product enhances new transnational epistemologies with a lot of problems. There is not a gender perspective in the whole TV series. And it fosters activist representations which practice some sort of dissent and activate transformative hope. In Mediterranean, there is not a transformative hope. Hope is to be saved. However, here you vertebrate, you propose your own hope, which involves changing things. Changing things as in changing something which becomes transmuting, cathartic, and reparative, which opens a space for reparative histories to continue. So that's it. Thank you.